Commissioner Carolina Mejia, and today I'm having coffee with Ben Miller-Todd, Emergency Services Director at Thurston County, and Jeff Johnston, Executive Director at Olympic Region Clean Air Agency, or ORCA. Thank you again for joining me today. The reason I say it's timely, we just got through with a big scare down in Offutt Lake area, and I was thinking about having this conversation even before we started having, wildfire safety issues. I kind of wanted to start off with kind of what causes wildfires and how do we respond to wildfires in Thurston County. But before we get into that, Ben, if you'll tell me a little bit about yourself so people can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us, Commissioner Mejia. We're really excited to be able to talk about this, and it's less excitement, but more really impressing on the community a level of preparedness, and education is part of that preparedness. So thank you very much for having us. I'm Ben Miller-Todd. I'm the Emergency Services Director, which oversees the Emergency Management Division for Thurston County. And so we, at times, when the events get large enough, we'll be coordinating or helping with a lot of the logistics and planning and operations and finances involved with major events. And so with that, I'll jump in to answer part of the question. With that, just thinking about wildfires in general, just about everything about wildfires or red flag warnings or any of those components really has to do with honestly moisture. When we go back and we think about the basics of creating a fire, you have to have an ignition source, you have to have oxygen, and you have to have a fuel. Well, fuel plays a major role when you're thinking about wildfires. Wildfires, as we reduce the moisture content in our fuels, and we're ripe with fuels in the Pacific Northwest, as we continue to reduce those moisture contents and we continue to increase heat and we continue to reduce the humidity, we're limiting the amount of moisture that dampens down or reduces the hazard of wildfire. And as we enter those red flag warnings where we have increased winds, reduced humidity, and increased heat, and especially as we get late into the season or into the season, July, August, September, and unfortunately last year we ended up into October, November, continued to see smoke and wildfire. It's because the conditions had to do a lot with the moisture that was in the fuels. And so as you look around, you drive around Thurston County, it's beautiful rolling hills, plenty of grasses. Those grasses dry out over time. So the greenness of the grass that we see when you're thinking about the fuel or the moisture content of those fuels, when you're driving around and you're looking and you see this, this field of grass in the spring, you see it nice and ripe and green and lush. And as you drive by that same fuel source or by those grasses or underbrush or trees, you're starting to see the reduction in the fuel, or excuse me, reduction in the moisture as it turns brown. And as you see that fuel moisture reduction, that's really what promotes that really intense season for wildfire that becomes ripe for that. The other component is, unfortunately, ignition sources. We have quite a few fires, many fires that are created by man-made instances, and that's where you're getting into seeing the burn bans that are put in place. Whether that's burning, routine burning, whether that's burning your garbage, whether that's getting into recreational burning. As the conditions continue to ripen for wildfire, that's where you're starting to see agencies start to place those burn bans in place. And so it's a safety issue in terms of why we put those burning bans in place in order to reduce the potential for that. The other side of that is natural. The easy one to point at is having late season thunderstorms that roll across the mountains. They tend to start wildfires over the Cascades and into the eastern slopes. And so that's where we'll start to see that. And so in terms of just overall response in Thurston County, we're lucky. We have 12 fire agencies in Thurston County that are absolutely wonderful at coordinating with each other to be able to give a response that is quite rapid and has a well-coordinated effort. They're well-versed in working with each other, and so those initial responses will be done at the local level in terms of how we respond. So in terms of Offutt Lake, you're looking at the East Olympia area, Southeast Thurston area, South Thurston and others that are all responding into this in a coordinated fashion. And then as it grows or it needs more resources, you see then state resources or other regional resources so come into play. And so we actually had DNR involvement as well as local involvement in the recent fire that you referenced down at Offutt Lake. So.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Ben. And Jeff, could you please introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about Orca and what they do?
Sure. Well, again, thank you for the invitation to be here with you to talk about this important and timely topic. So ORCA, or the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency, is a local government agency that is responsible for keeping the air clean, not only in Thurston County, but also in Mason County, in Jefferson County, Clallam, Grays Harbor, and Pacific counties. So we've got a fairly large, over 8,000 square mile jurisdiction. We're a small agency of 17 people with offices here in Olympia, but we, again, are responsible for a wide variety of things, enforcing state and federal Clean Air Act, as well as our own regulations. We're also responsible for monitoring air quality in our jurisdiction. So we operate monitors, air quality monitors in each of our counties.
Thank you. Yeah, and so you have a very important role, especially when there's wildfires in the area and monitoring if the smoke is going to be affecting the general population, I guess.
Yes.
So what can we expect this wildfire season like in the South Sound region? Is it going to be something where we're going to see it bleed into October again, or are we expecting something shorter?
In terms of what we're expecting going in through this year, as it kind of ties back to El Nino. And so it has to do with weather patterns throughout, well, the world. And as we see El Niños set in, what we expect in the Pacific Northwest is a slightly warmer and drier season that may ultimately end up extending our fire seasons out into October like we saw, or even November as we saw moving forward. However, this is a general pattern, and so making those generalizations now, we could see an alteration in localized weather patterns that help to dampen down some of that risk in the event that there was an unforeseen or an incongruent with an El Nino system that's moving in that dumps a little bit more rain earlier in the season. But in general, we're looking at, over the next couple years, most likely a slightly warmer and more extended and drier season that's slightly extended.
So what are the risks and hazards when it comes to wildfires and the impacts that they have in our community? I'm thinking about the property side of things, but I'm guessing there's also health side. So can both of you kind of speak on what those risks and hazards are?
Absolutely. With that, I'm going to, this is devastating, but paints the picture of wildfire not just being property and not just being resources that are used, but unfortunately we see not only the Offutt Lake issue, but in Maui and what they're responding to, and it's a life safety issue. Everything that we're doing from an operational standpoint looks at prioritizing life safety and then the protection of property as we go through that progression. Life safety is paramount. We'll talk about that a little bit in terms of preparedness moving forward. But in terms of wildfires, making sure you're well informed and having a plan. And when asked to evacuate at certain levels, that you are either preparing yourself or evacuating in a timely fashion to help protect that. Additionally, we have the risk of homes, residences that would be affected, the displacement from homes, the loss of property, which is devastating for the families that experience it. And so we're looking to prevent that as we go forward.
So I can talk a little bit about wildfire smoke. And of course, as we know, wildfire smoke is something that can be transported hundreds or even thousands of miles. And so we've been talking about wildfires here in Thurston County, but of course we can also be impacted by wildfires from well outside of our region, as we've experienced in past summers. And as we saw earlier this summer with much of the eastern seaboard, much of the east coast of the US, and in fact the Midwest impacted by the wildfires in Quebec. And wildfire smoke can have really significant health impacts. In terms of the folks who are impacted by wildfire smoke.
Yeah. And I'm guessing when it comes to wildfire smoke, there's also, it's not just the immediate risk, but I think it's something that keeps on going throughout the years and has an ongoing medical effect.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's, and different people, so different parts of our community are are susceptible in different ways to wildfire smoke, particularly people with pre-existing conditions such as asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, chronic bronchitis, emphysema, those kinds of things. Also respiratory infections such as COVID-19, pneumonia, acute bronchitis are also more impacted by wildfire smoke. And in fact, there's some recent studies that just came out showing that, in fact, that people that have had air quality exposure, exposure to air pollution, are more susceptible to contracting COVID-19, and then the symptoms are more severe as well. And then there's also folks with heart or circulatory problems, congestive heart failure, and so on, can also be particularly sensitive to air pollution. And then separate from those specific health issues, there's what we call sensitive groups, and people 18 or younger, people older than 65, pregnant women, or outdoor workers are what we consider those sensitive groups in terms of their susceptibility to wildfire smoke.
Thank you. And I think no one ever wants to find themselves in that situation, but, you know, if it were to happen, what can us as a community, us as individuals do to help reduce the risk of wildfires in our community? You know, just for protection's sake, right? Like, what can we do? What are the steps that we need to take?
Absolutely. One of the things that I did want to call out is that West Thurston Regional Fire Authority on the south side of our county, as well as alongside of DNR and other local groups, have coordinated and cooperated in promoting a FireWise campaign. What we can do not only to, and this is in reference to protecting or having a defensible space around our homes, should we allow those grasses and other growth to basically grow up against the home and have an undefensible space in the event of a wildfire, it's very difficult to protect those properties. And so making sure that we are having making sure that our homes are protected from, as best as possible, in preparedness for a wildfire in areas where we're more susceptible to it is very important. Thurston County is one of the first 4 counties on the west side of the mountains to be implementing the FireWise campaign in coordination with the Commissioner of Public Lands initiative. And so that's something that we can be doing to protect our property. And then the other side of that is preparedness in general.
Can you talk a little bit about the FireWise campaign and what that means for people who don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the FireWise campaign, and I would encourage individuals to go on, I'm going to make this easy. So Google search FireWise Washington State, and it'll pop up with the Commissioner of Public Lands' website. This FireWise campaign looks at how you would structure your home and keep it defensible. And so it looks at a variety of aspects, whether it's putting rocks a specific set of inches around the property instead of having grasses grow up against it, making sure you're cleaning out gutters, making sure you're keeping trees trimmed away from the home, and a variety of other aspects that can make your house more defensible in the event of a wildfire encroaching on your property. One thing that a lot of individuals, I would say, aren't aware of on the west side is that really well-versed, and I would say our fire teams are very well versed in the event of wildfire entering properties, that they're able to help protect homes that are defensible much more easily, much more readily, I should say. They're able to walk the fire around the home and help prevent that fire from entering the home, and also you're helping to protect your neighbors. Making your home more defensible protects your neighbors' homes as well, so that in the event of the Offutt Lake, in a very dense I would say, housing structure or housing setup, one home being affected can then affect multiple homes. And so you're helping your neighbors, not only yourself, in that event.
So let's go back to smoke safety and just the health hazard of smoke. We saw it really bad this year in the New York area as Canada had several fires and they were dealing with that. And Thurston County has not been immune to it. We've had it in years past where, you know, we've had really bad smoky seasons. So how can residents really stay safe and healthy when there's wildfire smokes in the air?
Great question. Well, the most important thing is to stay informed, and there are lots of sources of information about how the public, how community can learn about what's going on with air quality. Starting with ORCA's website, I mentioned that we had monitors throughout our jurisdiction, so we've got monitor values there. Department of Ecology has a website with air quality information. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has a great tool called the Fire and Smoke map that has frankly thousands of air quality monitors, air quality sensors, as well as fire locations, and there's layers that show you where the wildfire smoke is impacting. So that's a great resource. Ecology also has an easy to use app there's an iPhone version and an Android version, so you can that's easy to access on your phone.
What's the name of the app?
It's
Not
called.
to put you in the spot.
No, it's. I think it's just Ecology Air Quality, but I know that we'll have a link with this video that folks can access it. But if you search in the App Store for Washington Air Quality, I'm sure it will come up in the App Store. And then the Washington Smoke blog is another really good source of information that a lot of government agencies collaborate on, putting information, not just current information, but air quality forecast. So there's a lot of information there. And the Washington State Department of Health has great resources, and they've got extensive, frequently asked questions that cover a lot of the things that we're talking about here today. But I'll just add that air quality can change very rapidly, and so it's important to, when we are in the middle of these wildfire smoke episodes, to be readily or frequently checking the air quality in your particular area.
That's great. Yeah, things you really learn as, I've learned a lot of these things while I've been involved with ORCA. And then I've learned so much about wildfires, just in conversations with Ben, and, didn't think that a rainy spring would mean that would be like more fuel later on. It was one of the things just like, oh, that makes sense once I actually discussed it. But how can Thurston County residents really be more prepared for wildfires and wildfire smokes? How can we really be ready, be prepared, and have, we're doing the education piece right here, but what are other steps that people can take besides education?
Yeah. In terms of preparing yourself, when you're looking at the spectrum, it's really important to plan ahead. So in that planning ahead involves not only getting the supplies you might need, simple things that you may not think about. We think about food and water and shelter and have all these plans in place, but also having those little things in place, such as what medications might you need, what your dog food, anything else that you may need to be absolutely ready to walk out of your home at a moment's notice. And that's for really all hazards that are present in Thurston County. Having that ready to go. One component that I do want to call out is that for those of you that are listening, I really encourage you to attend on September 23rd. There's a preparedness expo that we're putting on. Thurston County Emergency Management helps to put on in coordination with a plethora of other agencies, but they're accessible and accessible to the community between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on the 23rd at the Peter G. Schmidt Elementary School in order to ask any questions that you might have. Preparedness is something, especially for wildfires, is newer to the Thurston County community or the west side of the mountains. While we're getting more well-versed in this, walking through those preparedness components can be helpful, and this is one of the events that we have. In addition, I call out Google searches on this, but Google searching Thurston County Emergency Management, we have an entire preparedness page where you can walk through preparing for a variety of disasters, or even those that are more locally located. With that, I also wanted to call out that staying informed is one of those components of planning. And so making sure that you're very well versed in the alert and warning systems that are available in your community. TC Alert, or Thurston County Alert, is one where you can sign up and make sure that you have the information available to you that can be geolocated information that's sent directly to your phones in a variety of different ways, whether it's texting, reverse phone calling, or emailing. It's an excellent way for us to be able to get a hold of you, as well as keeping tabs on local weather and keeping tabs on the local media, as well as more regional event planning. So,
How many people are signed up to TC Alert?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, we're in the multiple of thousands, but as a reminder, there's 300,000 residents in Thurston County. And so right now, we're well under 10% of the population, and we would highly encourage the population or the Thurston County residents to sign up for TC Alert so that they can be well informed of any events that are going on.
So you're hearing that. Sign up. Ben, how do you sign up?
It's very simple. The website is tcalert.org, and so you can jump in there. Honestly, if you don't remember that or that's hard to find, Thurston County Alert is also available, or as I mentioned before, the link is also available on Thurston County Emergency Management's website, which is an easy Google search away. It's the first result.
So I have to ask, because it's always asked, how about for those who do not have access to either a phone or internet? Is there another way where they can receive notifications? Maybe a landline, is that?
Yes, so absolutely. So it's not only cell phones and texting and email, but phones also consider the landline. And so you're able to list a landline. Excellent question. Thank you.
Thank you. And how can they sign up with a landline?
So they're able, if they need help walking through the process, we're going to go through all these pieces. I appreciate this. Please feel free to call Thurston County Emergency Management. We will be more than happy to walk you through the registration process.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Ben. Okay, and then let's go with Wildfire Smoke. How can we?
Sure. So in terms of being prepared, I mean, like I was talking about earlier, there's lots of sources of information. So just being familiar with those. One thing I didn't go into before was, again, if we are having, or when we have a wildfire smoke impact, there are certain things that you can do to help protect yourself. First is staying indoors, where typically air can be cleaner indoors than outdoors. You want to close windows and doors to the outside unless it's too hot unless it gets dangerously hot inside. You want to filter indoor air using an HVAC system, using a HEPA portable air cleaner, or a do-it-yourself box fan, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. You can also, some air conditioners you can set to recirculate, so that's another step that you can take. You don't want to add to indoor air pollution, so don't burn candles, don't smoke cigarettes or vape indoors, because that will obviously make the indoor air quality worse. Burning candles. Avoid vacuuming and sweeping indoors, because that, you wouldn't think about it, but that actually adds dust and particles to the air. So just wait until the air is cleaner before doing that. And if you really are unable, if it's too hot and you don't have a good filtration system in your home, think about where else you might be able to go. Again, maybe there's some areas where you could travel that aren't that far away, where maybe the air is cleaner, or maybe you've got friends that do have a better air filtration system at their place. And if you do have to be outside for a limited duration, think about getting an N95 mask for while you are outside. Again, if the air quality is bad enough. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is something called the AQI, or the Air Quality Index. So this is something that a number of government agencies have come together to create. It's essentially a color-coded scheme that ranks from green to yellow to orange to red and deeper colors. And again, green is good, yellow is moderate, orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups. So again, it gets back to those sensitive groups that I was talking about a few minutes ago. And then again, so that's just an easy way to monitor your air quality, is just look at, say, well, what's the AQI? Oh, it's green, I'm okay. Or it's yellow, I need to start paying attention, that kind of thing. So again, in terms of preparedness, just know where you can go to get information. Know, well, if there is a wildfire smoke impact, how am I going to keep the air clean in my house, in my apartment? Just again, as Ben was saying, just be thinking ahead, because that's I think the most important thing.
Let's go back to the AQI. That's, I think I've seen it before, and it's a pretty cool tool. Wondering where we have been this season. We've been mostly in the green area? Have we gone down a little where it's dangerous? And is there particular wildfires that affect that index a little more? How have we been here in Thurston County?
Sure. So luckily, I don't have any wood to knock on, but we've been it's been mostly green. So our air quality has been mostly in the good category so far this summer. There have been some areas that have been where it has creeped up into the yellow or the moderate category. I've probably heard about the sourdough fire up in the North Cascades. So there have been a couple instances where that smoke has gotten, where there's been easterly winds that have brought that down into the Puget Sound lowlands. And so some areas were impacted by that. I've also had some fires last weekend around Joint Base Lewis McChord. There was a fire in near Shelton earlier this summer. So there have been relatively minor impacts that had relatively smaller impacts short term, but for the most part, again, knock on wood, the air has been in the good category so far this summer.
That's good to hear. And you also mentioned the DIY aspects. I know HVACs and air filtration systems can be very expensive. So what is that do-it-yourself option that you mentioned that can improve air quality in your home?
Sure. Well, I've got an example right here. So as it turns out, it's actually very easy to construct a do-it-yourself air cleaner using a 20-inch box fan that you can get at Home Depot, Lowe's, another retailer, and a furnace filter. You want to use what's called a MERV 13 or better, which MERV is essentially the value, the filtering capacity of the filter, and some duct tape. And you simply make a filter, connect it like this. Orca has a website, has a video on our website. We'll share the link with some steps to how to construct one. This is the easiest one to construct, but there's ways to put examples together that actually use more filters and can process more air. But again, this is a relatively inexpensive way of creating an air cleaner that you can use in your home when we do have when we have poor air quality in our area.
And it works in a zip. Well, thank you so much. And can we turn that around a little bit so we can see the different angles of it?
Sure. And you might notice some tape on here. And again, if you go to the video, you'll be able to, it'll explain why we've done this, but essentially it keeps it from sucking air in. Because you want, of course, with this design, you want all the air to come in the back.
And you turn it like that. Perfect. That way you can.
Okay, so you want all the air to be going in there so that it comes out the front. And you want to make sure to be using a modern fan. And again, information in the video on our website about how to build this and another version as well.
And we'll be linking that video below. So if you're interested in this, I was very interested when I first saw it. I've been very excited and talking about this fan quite a bit because I just think it's such a great way, an affordable way to, especially as filtration systems get more expensive.
Sure.
Well, thank you for joining me, Ben and Jeff. This has been such a great conversation. For everyone watching at home, if you want to keep up with your local government, subscribe to the county's YouTube channel. You can watch the Board of County Commissioners meetings, work sessions, and shows like this one there. And thank you again for coming, guys.